Alright, so it's a chilly day here in Half Moon Bay, breezy and overcast. I'm going to try to do a wave painting today. I'll be painting over an old painting. This is an 11 by 22 inch panel. I've got my usual limited palette, but I've got a bunch of extra colors here left over from a previous painting. The waves are pretty small today, but as usual, I'll just be using the wave shapes as inspiration. I'm going to try to keep the colors pretty true to life, starting with a mixture of titanium white, ultramarine blue, a touch of burnt sienna, and I am thinning with liquid today. Decided to go with a high horizon, about a quarter or a fifth of the way from the top. First step is just to eliminate the old painting. So I'm putting a thin layer of this blue-gray mixture onto the panel. And I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat. For the sand, I'm starting with a mixture of titanium white and yellow ochre. I then added some burnt sienna and a bit of ultramarine blue to gray down the mix, holding up my brush to compare the color mix to the actual sand. I'm going to start out by being fairly true to the colors that I'm seeing, and then I will punch up the colors as needed. It's been over a year since I've done one of these wave panoramas. I actually really enjoy doing them. It's a fun subject to paint because I can really experiment with abstract shapes. I've added a bit of ultramarine blue to the mix, and this will be for the wet sand. I want to make sure that my sand mixes are dark enough that the white water stands out. The white water will be the lightest value in the painting. It can be challenging painting over an old painting, but it also can set you free in a way because there's nothing to lose and you're putting a panel or canvas that otherwise may have gone to waste to use. I actually really enjoy it. All right, I've added some titanium white to my sky mixture, some wave activity in the foreground here. I'll probably have some white water across the wet sand as well, something like that. But I want to establish the white water pattern before painting in the darker water. And I'll have a bigger breaking wave out here. Something like that. For the dark water, I mixed up a gray using ultramarine blue, titanium white, and some burnt sienna, but I've added quite a bit of alizarin crimson to the mix. It's surprising how much red there is in seawater, in particular this Northern California seawater. I do notice that the color of the ocean is different in Southern Cal. Definitely more blue-greens in the water. Up here it's sort of a dark grayish green, but as I mentioned, there's often little hints of red in the water. This little bit of white water here was from the previous painting, but I kind of like it, so I'm experimenting with leaving that. I added a bit of phthalo blue and yellow ochre to the mix. The water closer to shore is more of a green color. Maybe I'll add a little bit of the green to this portion of the water as well. Now the sun is coming out, which is nice because it's kind of chilly out here. But that's typical July at the beach here in Northern Cal. I'm noticing that the breaking wave that's rolling in has quite a bit of white water behind it. So I'm going to add some white water to the wave in the foreground. It's nice using liquid or some sort of medium when painting water because it allows you to mimic the fluidity of the water. All right, I've decided to move this breaking wave up a little bit. Felt like it was a little too low, a little too close to the center of the panel, but now I've got it at about a third of the way from the top. I try to be conscious of the size of the waves In the past, I would often make the waves far too big, and it would just look sort of unrealistic or kind of cartoon-esque maybe, I don't know. The waves are actually quite small when viewed from shore, even when they're fairly large. Here's a breaking wave right here. You can see not very big, and I'd say these waves are about 1 to 2 foot. So at this point I've got the panel covered and the composition is mapped out. So I walk back about 15 or 20 feet from the panel and I'm looking at the composition, but I'm also looking at color and comparing the color that I've got in my painting to the colors that I'm seeing in the ocean. And so now I will make some adjustments. Mixed up a dull purple color here for the sky. I'm still thinning a bit with liquid, but I'm using less. And I think that I'm going to use progressively less throughout the painting, especially for the white water. I'm going for an average overall color for the sky, but then I will be looking for minute shifts in color and temperature, adding a bit of phthalo blue and titanium white to the horizon. I'm seeing bits of a more saturated blue in the distance. I've got a mixture here of titanium white and burnt sienna. I find that this mixture is perfect for adding light in the sky, in particular for the light portion of the clouds. I often like to work quickly and then look for shapes that emerge out of the spontaneity and then build upon those. I'm noticing that the water at the horizon is sort of a dark purplish color, so I am adding a bit of ultramarine blue with a touch of alizarin crimson to the horizon, still using the number 8 natural bristle flat. I think this brush is my favorite brush. It's certainly the one I use the most. This brush may be the only brush I use for this painting. There's something nice about using one brush for an entire painting. I think it gives the painting a continuity. It's kind of like using a limited palette to add color harmony. I feel by using fewer brushes, you have brush stroke harmony, if that's a thing. I may have lightened that water up a little too much, we'll see. I've got a gray mixture here, and I am pushing the alizarin crimson in this mix. The water will always reflect the sky color. I think I'm gonna add a forming wave right here. I'm noticing I've got 2 different colors of sand here, and that's because of the previous painting. I actually like the color and value of the sand right here. Again, paying attention to value, I want to make sure that my sand mixture is not too light in value, because I want the sand to be darker than the white water so that the white water stands out. I'm just going to add a bit more burnt sienna to the mix here. Try to get some lines of motion in the sand as well to hopefully lead the eye into the composition. I think I went a bit too dark, so I've got some yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and titanium white, adding back a bit of warmth to the sand. I backed up from the painting and decided that the wet sand was just a little too gray in color, seeing a bit more ultramarine and purplish colors in the wet sand. So, making that adjustment. Okay, that's definitely better. I'm gonna lighten up the wet sand a bit. It is reflecting the sky, especially along the edge where it meets the sand. And it's a bit darker as it gets closer to the waves. It's kind of fun taking my time and just carefully observing the different shifts in color, value, temperature, etc. All right, so here's what I finished up with. This painting took about 90 minutes to complete. It was finished on site. I don't plan on doing any touch-ups to this painting. I want to keep the waves feeling spontaneous and loose. I've done quite a few of these wave panoramas, and I've found that it's helpful to put some sort of interest in the distance, either light in the sky like I did right here. Actually, I put some light on the clouds as well. I think that helps create a feeling of depth and space, which is one of the appealing things when looking at the ocean, is the sort of feeling of infinite depth. I really do enjoy doing these wave paintings. At first it was really challenging, obviously, because the water is constantly moving, but it does allow you the freedom to experiment with shapes. I did try to stay as accurate as possible with the colors. In order to color match, I just mix the color and then hold up the brush and compare it to the scene. What I've found is the color can be the same, but the value is often different. In other words, if I make the value match what I'm seeing in the scene, it's often too dark on the panel. This is something you'll just have to experiment with, but I can tell the general color by holding up the brush to the scene. It's particularly helpful for things like white water. Any kind of white or light color, it's very difficult to determine which way the white is leaning. Is it leaning towards purple or blue or red or yellow, whatever. But by putting some pure titanium white on your brush and holding it up against, say, the white water, usually it's fairly clear the direction you need to push it. Most of the time it's some sort of aqua green color. Often though it is purplish or maybe an ultramarine color, which is a very light tint. It's also important when judging color to stand back from your easel. I've mentioned this before regarding composition. You know, you should be stepping back from your easel 10 to 15 feet every few minutes if possible. And that allows you to see the big shapes and make sure your composition is working. But I've found that it's also helpful in judging color. If I'm close to my panel or my canvas, I tend to think the colors are more saturated than they really are. So when I step back, I often find that I need to push the saturation or adjust the value. But like I said, it's very difficult to accurately judge the colors when you're close up on your canvas or your panel. So just another reason to continue to step back from your painting during the painting process. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. There's also a PayPal tip jar down below, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.